Hello, my name is Alicia, and welcome to my Unnoticed Evil channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the topic of love. And so love is something you may have heard about in, say, fairy tales, where if anything, we're led to believe that love is, if anything, opposing to evil, and can actually help to overcome evil. But in the real world, love can actually be a motivator to do evil. Why is that? Well, the English language word love has many different meanings. It can refer to a food that tastes good in your mouth, or it could be that feeling you have for your one and only child. But one thing to keep in mind is that when somebody loves us, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're always on our side. So when we think of different categories of love, one common thing that comes to mind is platonic love versus romantic love. But there's another categorization of love that you may not have heard of, and that is love as an emotional attachment versus love as in caring about someone's better interests and being ready to act on those better interests without expecting anything in return. These two categorizations of love, they don't go together as much as you may think. Sometimes we treat the people the worst who are the closest to us. Conversely, we often on our best behavior around strangers and acquaintances. So as you can see in this list here, there are many different acts of evil that can have love as a motivator. One example is committing adultery. Lots of times when people commit adultery, they do love each other. And indeed, you can even consider adultery to be an act of love. But it also is an act of evil. Adultery is one of many acts of evil that can have love as a motivator. Another example of a wicked behavior that can have love as a motivator is favoritism. So as an example, let's say a woman named Peggy is in charge of a competition for children, and her son is one of the children in the competition. And let's say that because Peggy loves her son so much, she decides to secretly give her son some unfair advantages that help him win the competition. Should our hearts be warmed by this act of love on Peggy's part? Well, no, because this is a form of favoritism, and it leads to injustice. So this is another example of where love can be the motivator, but at the same time, the behavior is still a wicked behavior. Now, there are also other kinds of wicked behaviors that can have love as a motivator. Another example is neglecting duties and responsibilities, as you can see in the story of Prince Edward. Take a look.
King Edward VIII was the King of England, one of the most powerful positions in the world, but he was in love with Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee, a relationship that scandalized British society and the royal family. As king, he was expected to choose duty over personal desires, but Edward saw things differently. On December 10, 1936, he made a historic and unprecedented decision. In a formal statement, he declared, "I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility without the help and support of the woman I love." The very next day, his younger brother, George VI, ascended the throne, and Edward became the Duke of Windsor. Edward's choice reshaped the monarchy and stirred debates for years. Was it a reckless abandonment of duty, or the ultimate act of love? This dramatic act left the world stunned. A king had relinquished his crown, not for war, politics, or scandal, but for love, a move that redefined royal history forever.
So we see here in the story that Prince Edward had neglected duties to his country in the name of love. He was supposed to be the king of his country. It was his duty. But he fell in love with an American woman who happened to be divorced. And he wanted to be with the woman he loved. So he chose her over the throne. And now a lot of people had problems with this because he had a duty to his country and he had chosen not to fulfill that duty and made his younger brother have to take his place. Now another example of where love led to evil is what happened with Anakin Skywalker in the Star Wars story. Anakin Skywalker had ultimately turned to the dark side because of his love for Padme, as you can see in this clip here.
Please, don't! What have I done?
You're fulfilling your destiny, Anakin. Become my apprentice. Learn to use the dark side of the Force.
I will do whatever you ask.
Good.
Just help me save Padme's life. I can't live without her.
So you see here that Anakin Skywalker loved Padme very much. He felt emotionally attached to her, and he even cared about her better interests. And the dark side had promised that it could do certain unnatural things, like bring people back from the dead, and Anakin just could not resist. So he had turned to the dark side to save Padme, because he loved her so much. And this is another example of where someone has fallen into evil because of love. So when people say that they do things out of love or in the name of love, while we are expected to believe that they must be doing something good, notion is far from reality. In my opinion, love can make us do good things or bad things, just like anger or fear. Anger or fear, sometimes they can make us do good things, not just bad things. Now, romantic love in particular can be a snare. Romantic love can feel very strong, very impassioned, very deep. But you see, romantic love, it can refer to a schoolboy or schoolgirl crush, or it can refer to an elderly couple that have been married for 50 years and have become each other's half. Now, romantic love, not only can it be shallow, but it also can lead to acts of evil. For example, a man stalking a woman can say that he is stalking the woman because he loves her, and indeed that romantic attraction he has for her, that desire for intimacy with her, well, it can actually fall under one of the many different definitions of the word love. But it doesn't mean that he cares about the woman's better interests. In his evil heart, he may think he's entitled to her, have her, entitled to wield control over her, and maybe even entitled to abuse her. Now, in addition, love can be used as a rationalization for various evil behaviors. While romantic love can be used to rationalize away stalking, there are other kinds of behaviors in a Platonic context where love can be used to rationalize away evil. For example, an adult may touch a child in an inappropriate manner, even when the child flinches and makes it obvious that the touching is unwelcome. The adult may caress the child along the face and neck, run his or her fingers through the child's hair, wrap his or her hands and arms around the child's waist. And in the process, the adult may convince him or herself that this is okay because it's an expression of love. And isn't this supposed to be a beautiful thing? Well, excessive physical contact with a child can be a sign of pedophilic tendencies. In addition, the unsolicited touching can cause mental damage. It can teach the child that he or she is not worthy of having his or her own space. So there are some other contexts also where love can be used to rationalize away evil behaviors. And this includes controlling behaviors. Sometimes love can be used as an excuse by one person to wield control over another person. The other person may say, well, I'm controlling you because I love you and I care about what happens to you. Indeed, this controlling behavior can be under the claim of being for the victim's own good. Yet, these controlling behaviors can involve mental abuse, invasion of physical space, manipulation, and control of the victim's life. And this can leave the victim suffering with psychological distress due to diminished control over his or her own life. And if the victim objects, then the perpetrator may just attempt to accuse the victim of being insolent and ungrateful that somebody loves them. These forms of manipulation are meant to keep the victim in a state of submission. Note, however, that using love to rationalize away evil behaviors doesn't necessarily mean that the love is the true motive behind the evil behavior. For example, controlling behaviors tend to have selfish motives. Nonetheless, when we use love to rationalize away evil behaviors, we're making love into some horrible, ugly thing that is really just not meant to be. So what if you really did care about someone's better interests? That could only lead to good, right? Well, not necessarily. Let's say that there's somebody you care about who needs an organ transplant. And so you go out and you kill someone and harvest the person's internal organs. Maybe you're doing this out of love, but note that doing something for one person's better interests may be to the detriment of another person. So how do we reconcile this with what the Bible says about how God is a God of love and we are all to love each other? Well, you see, biblical love is not the same thing as the English language word love. Biblical love refers to love in action. It is when we are to actively care about each other's better interests and act in each other's better interests. It's not referring to emotional attachment. And in fact, now the Bible also says we are to love everybody, not just our friends and family. And that includes even our enemies. And so when the Bible says to love our enemies, certainly it's not saying that we have to be emotionally attached to our enemies, but rather that even if our enemies try to do bad things to us, we are still supposed to act in our enemies' better interests, and we're supposed to not wish bad on our enemies like other people do. So I hope that this presentation has given you shed some light on love, how complex it is, and how it's not always as opposing to evil as you may think,